This is the Brew World Order Podcast.
Welcome to the Brew World Order Podcast. My name is Mike Curtin. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. This is episode number 27. In this episode, I sit down with Mike Snowdale of Stellwagen Beer Company in Marshfield, Massachusetts. Mike talks to me about how he has switched things up and basically become a restaurant to stay open due to COVID regulations in Massachusetts, and how making beer may just get you in talks with Robert Smith of The Cure. Well, we'll see how that plays out with that situation, but for now, I got a fever, and the only cure is more podcast. Sit back, crack open a beer, and enjoy the podcast. Hey guys, I'm Mike Curtin. This is the Brew World Order Podcast, and today I'm with Mike Snowdale from Stellwagen Beer Company in Marshfield, Massachusetts. Mike Snowdale had been home brewing for 12 years and always considered it just a hobby. He never wanted to own his own brewery, but rather work for someone else who did. After patiently waiting for that opportunity that never seemed to come, he decided that he was going to take matters into his own hands and open his own brewery. He felt like he was going to need someone with serious experience in the industry, so he teamed up with Brian Flatch, who at the time was head brewer at John Harvard's in Framingham. He then had his brother Dave, who had a background in construction, join the team to help with the build-out for the brewery. The three partners worked away, and after all the dust settled in 2018, they opened their doors as Stellwagen Beer Company. And Mike is with me here today. Mike, thank you for joining us.
Hey, Mike, no problem. Happy to be here.
Yeah, appreciate it. So, you opened towards the end of 2018, correct? Or middle?
No, it was right in the middle of 2018. We opened our doors July 3rd. So right before 4th of July, we released, we did a whole bunch of cans because we didn't have our permit to let people in yet.
Right.
And we wanted to make sure that, people got to enjoy, fresh beer out in Marshfield for the 4th of July holiday. And then we ended up getting our permit on July 5th. We opened the doors to let people in for beers in the tap room on July 5th, 2018.
So you had been open for about, let's say, a year and a half before this whole COVID situation hit. It sounds like you guys were striving and doing really well. How hard hit were you by COVID business-wise?
Kind of a tale of two different segments. When the shutdown happened up here in Massachusetts, it was St. Patrick's Day weekend. So being about a half an hour to an hour south of Boston, St. Patrick's Day weekend is a pretty big one for beer drinking.
Yeah, of course.
And March, historically, we didn't have too many months to go off of, but what little we did have to go off of, March had been one of our best months for on-premise for beer sold out of our tap rooms. So when we got shut down on March 16th, that was a pretty big hit. We didn't really know what was going to end up happening for the next weeks, months. At this point, it looks like years, but at the time, it really sucked. We took a pretty big hit in March. It kind of turned around for us fairly quickly. Naively, I was hoping, it was only going to last a couple weeks.
Right.
And we were trying to figure out what we were going to do with packaging. Should we start putting all of our beer into cans? Should we keep kegging beer? We did a couple batches that were very heavy on cans and very light on kegs, figuring, all right, well, maybe things will reopen in just a couple of weeks. We turned away from that pretty quickly, and by the beginning of April, we were putting all of our batches into cans. We scaled back a little bit, figuring that things would be slowed down without on-premise sales anywhere.
Right.
And we're small, right? Like we hardly distribute anything outside the state. Mostly we're just in a 30-mile radius of our brewery. You mentioned you had our beer down the Cape. That's about as far as we go. We just had no idea what to expect. We actually were overwhelmed with how positive April and May were through community support. I don't know if it was local supporting local, or if we were lucky because, everybody was in quarantine. And it's like, when you're in quarantine, what do? I don't know.
Right.
You sit around your house and look at all the projects you wanted to do, drink beers, watch Netflix. There wasn't much to do, so people turned to beers, and we were lucky they turned to us. And honestly, we cranked through April, May, June. We didn't really skip a beat other than having having to transition to packaging every batch into cans.
Did you have to let anybody go during that time, or that was?
We didn't.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting scenario. We don't have that many full-time staff. We have the three partners, my brother Brian and I, two full-time brewery staff, and three full-time taproom staff. We were able to keep all of us going on. And then we have probably anywhere between 6 and 9 part-time taproom staff. Honestly, we may have had to make some cuts, but the uncertainty around COVID, they didn't want to take any chances. So we had 3 or 4 people just straight up be like, I can't risk coming in because, my grandmother, who's a high-risk person. So they kind of took the hard decision away from me. So we were lucky in that. I told everybody right at the very beginning that I was going to do everything I possibly could to keep everybody employed.
Of course.
And keep the paychecks going. So fortunately, we didn't really have to make any hard decisions when it came to, staffing or payroll or anything like that.
I'm sure things are better now because now you've opened up your tap rooms now right up there and everything's pretty much somewhat back to normal, or?
No, there's still restrictions. I mean, we had to completely change our operating model in the tap room. I mean, pre-COVID, it was pretty typical tap room environment. We have a huge tap room. I mean, our capacity here is like over 200. So we never had to worry. We'd get big party buses coming in. We'd have 120 people here on a Saturday, and it didn't even feel that busy, but it would be. Now we're open, which we're thankful for. But up here in Massachusetts, we're now a restaurant. We had a very modest kitchen area to basically serve soft pretzels, and we had to kind of expand on that to meet the requirements up here. Where in order to be able to serve beer on premise, or any alcohol for that matter, the beer or alcohol has to be accompanied by a meal that is prepared on site. Right. And they got pretty strict with enforcing that. So we had to scramble to try to become a restaurant for all intents and purposes. Now we're doing food prepared on site. We had to do 100% table service. Everybody has to be seated. There's no more coming up to the bar.
Right. Yes.
So we had to retrain all of our taproom staff from just taking orders up at the counter to all being servers. Going around waiting on tables. The cleaning and sanitizing is just to a whole new level. I mean, we always cleaned everything, obviously. I mean, the thing you do most of the brewery is clean, but it's 10 times what it was before. I mean, you walking around every half an hour cleaning off doorknobs, triple cleaning all the glassware, and we're going through about 1 million nitrile gloves a week. Everybody's going to be masked up. So we're still not even close to where we were from an on-premise taproom standpoint before, but it's certainly better now than it was in April and May and March, when we were completely shut down.
Huge shift, to say the least.
Big time shift.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been all that bad. August was a pretty cool month to kind of see the transition. People were starting to emerge from their basements. Their living rooms. It was a slow transition, but slowly it's all right. All of our tables are filled up. We've got a big back patio. We've got 2 patios. We've got tons of space outside. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know. We've got 10 tables outside, and we've had some Saturdays where people have had to wait to come on in because all of our tables are filled up.
Yeah,
we don't have standing room, so
that's great.
It's certainly better now, but yeah,
I'm happy to hear that. So you talk about the capacity of your place. You have a huge, basically, warehouse. How did you go about finding that location?
I grew up in a town called Cohasset, which is a couple of towns away from Marshfield, and I live in a town called Scituate now, which is right in between Marshfield and Cohasset.
Okay.
So I knew right away I wanted to focus on the South Shore. At the time I started planning it, there weren't that many breweries that were opened up down here. There might have been 2, maybe 3, within probably a 25-mile radius. By the time I found the building, there was already 3 that had opened and 2 more in planning. So a lot of people had the same idea I did. But I found this building in Marshfield just because, honestly, there's not too many places in the South Shore that have, buildings that are big enough. I wanted a standalone building. I didn't want to have a different business to the left of me and a different business to the right of me, because I wanted this to be a big open space where people could come and chill.
Yeah, right.
Outdoor space was really important to me. So there was definitely a lot of potential in this building. The fact that it's like right off the highway, less than a mile off of Route 3, which is the main drag that goes from Boston down to the Cape. So it's really busy in the summer.
Right.
Was a nice added bonus. And Marshfield was like super easy to work with. I called pretty much every single. I must have called 10, 15 different towns here to talk to their the boards of selectmen or their mayor or whoever would make the call on welcoming a brewery in, and Marshfield was super eager to work with me, so that made the decision a lot easier. A lot of the towns around here don't know, craft brewing or craft breweries are still very new to them. So even though Marshfield had never hosted a brewery before, they were, admittedly were just like, hey, we don't know exactly how to treat you, but we're going to work with you. And
right.
It was already in the bylaws. They had the foresight, like 2 years before I even had a thought to open a brewery. They had their bylaws amended to allow for a microbrewery to operate in some of their business zones. So I didn't really have to go through too much red tape there.
Perfect timing.
So it was perfect timing. All the pieces just kind of fell into place here. It was a match made in heaven, really.
Right. And how did you go about finding the funding to open your spot?
A bunch of different ways. The first thing I did was cash out a whole bunch of my own personal savings.
Right.
I hit up my family. Like you mentioned, my brother is the partner here, so he contributed some savings. A lot of family and friends, and a few other private investors. I guess angel investors or whatever you want to call them.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to raise probably about $250,000 that way. And then the rest was, like I said, personal savings and bank loans.
Okay. And how did you come up with this name for what's Stellwagen? Where did you come up with the name for that?
Oh, my God. That must have been the hardest part. Honestly, I wanted something to be... I wanted the name to be something local, something that resonated with people in the South Shore, obviously, but not so hyper local that it, would go over the heads of everybody else. And Stellwagen is the name of, it's a national marine sanctuary. It's like this underwater plateau that basically stretches from the tip of Cape Cod up to the fishing town of Gloucester, which is probably about an hour north of Boston. Basically, like if you're a ship coming into Massachusetts Bay from the Atlantic Ocean, you're sailing directly over this bank, and it's a pretty cool spot. Like it's one of the best spots in the world to whale watch.
Right.
Hence our logo is the humpback whale.
Right. Yes.
There's like crazy recreational fishing. There's bluefin tuna, yellowfin tuna. Like I don't know if you've seen that show Wicked Tuna.
Yes.
But like,
sure have. Yeah.
Half the scenes are them fishing over like Stellwagen Bank, or they go out to George's Bank or something like that. But feels like 70% of the people that I talk to about it, they're like, "Hey, cool name, where'd it come from?"
Right.
Like, what do you mean? where are you from?
Don't you live around here?
Yeah, right. So
Wicked Tuna, actually, I think one of the guys that's on that show is actually from a town in Queens, Howard Beach area. So you were doing home brewing for a long time before you did this. What was that? I know you said you didn't really want to open your own place. What was that aha moment for you where you were like, I got to do this. I got to make it happen.
Yeah, no kidding. So it was 35 now. So I must have started homebrewing when I was 21 years old with my friends from college.
Right.
And, we never made anything good. It was always like, oh man, this is amazing. Like we can just, get hammered on a beer that we just made, but it never like tasted good or anything like that. I was always mad because I was 21 years old. I was like, I want something that tastes like Bud Light. I want something I drink normally,
Right.
I wasn't really into craft beer as a person in my young 20s, but I don't know. I got a little older and I started kind of experimenting and trying new beers, and get a little bit better at home brewing. I did it a little bit more frequently. I was like, this is awesome. And I always, I started drinking, somebody gave me a heady topper once, and I was like, what the heck? How are they doing this? This is the most amazing thing I've ever tasted. And that was kind of like, I want to make a beer like this. How do I do that? And I never could, and eventually I got better at it. But, I was like, this is like all these different beers out there are amazing. Like, this is my passion. This is what I want to do. How do I get involved in this? So that kind of led me to applying at dozens of different jobs in the industry. Like, I didn't care where it was, if it was at a brewery, if it was at a, a distribution company or whatever. It was like, didn't matter which brewery. I mean, the big breweries around here are like Harpoon and Sam Adams. So
Right. Yeah. Of course.
in like 2007, 2008, 2009, when I was, just out of college and looking for a job, those are the places I applied at. And it just never worked out. And then honestly, when the recession of 2008 happened, I had a job in the financial world. And it was like, I was lucky to have one because it felt like everybody was getting laid off and losing their jobs. So I kind of just like dug in there for a while. Never really stopped applying at, or trying to find a job at the place. But, it became kind of obvious where it was like, oh shoot, like if I want to get in here, I'm going to have to like start at the bottom. Right. And I had kind of gotten to the point where it's like, all right, I got a family, I got a house, I got a mortgage. Like I don't know if I can start, washing kegs at a place for close to minimum wage. So I kind of like gave up on it a little bit. 2016, my wife and I welcomed our firstborn, Andrew, and it was great, but I wasn't ready for the lack of sleep. So, it's like I was already not really super passionate about what I was doing for work in the first place. And try going to a job you're not passionate about on like 1.5 hours of sleep when you've been up all night. It was just one of those things where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I just don't have the mental stamina to deal with a job that I just don't, it was paying the bills and it was a great job and the company was great. It just wasn't what I wanted to do. So at that point, I convinced my wife, who was probably even more sleep deprived than I was, that it was a good idea to leave a job with benefits and a massive 401k and everything that goes along with it. Start a brewery,
right?
And she bought it. She went along. I couldn't believe it, but
hey, why not? So, what's something you never thought you were going to have to deal with when opening your brewery?
I mean, other than a pandemic that shut down the entire world?
Other than the pandemic, yeah. I mean, other than that, what was something that, like, you came in and you said, oh my God, this is crazy. I never thought this was going to be part of the job description.
It's not necessarily a bad thing that I would say is the biggest surprise, and it's a pleasant surprise. It's something that I was hopeful to find in the industry, but really just the kind of camaraderie. I kind of hit on it that when we were, when I first started planning this place, there were two or three breweries within a 25 or 30 mile radius. And by the time I opened, I think four others had opened before, and then like 2 or 3 others opened within 6 months after we did. So we went from about 2 or 3 breweries to 10 or 11 breweries, all in pretty much the same spot, from Quincy, Braintree down to Plymouth here in Massachusetts, and we all get along pretty well, and we help each other out. And I had like heard that the industry was pretty cool like that, and I wasn't sure, with all of us opening up around the same time, if there would be, if it would just be like some animosity or competitive or what it is, but it's stayed kind of true to the kind of the camaraderie of the industry.
I'm sure you've met a lot of people too in the beer industry during that time. Who do you think's inspired you the most in the beer industry? Or maybe giving you some of the best advice, or along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, so a good friend of mine, a dude I went to college with, we graduated right at the same time, works for a brewery up in Maine. He's a part owner up there, actually. And he, his brewery is probably 5 or 6 years old at this point. And I was talking to him early on, and, they were kind of taking their model one direction. And I'm like, dude, why are you doing it? Why are you doing it like this? And like naively, I just assumed like, just because people were lining up that, some of the big hypey breweries, that every single brewery could manage that.
Right.
And or that's just the way it was for every single brewery. And it kind of was for a hot minute when craft breweries were really taking off and there weren't that many of us. But he was just like, yo, man, like, we don't all get lines that people wait 3 hours in. Like, you have to, explore all of these different avenues to be able to sell your beer. And that kind of like opened up my eyes that, hey, there's more than one way to kind of start and run a successful microbrewery, which, we're tiny. We're under 2,000 barrels a year this year. So,
Right.
there's many different ways that you can run your business, and you kind of turned me on to that. Obviously I wanted to, I want to be the brewery that people line up for 3 hours for. And,
Of course.
we sell
Of
out a
course.
beer in 10 minutes. And, don't get me wrong, like, we have a great following, and we are totally fortunate that we sell out a beer. Our batches go very quickly, but, there's a lot of different ways that we sell our beer too.
Was there a defining moment of success for you? And was there a moment that kind of like hit you where you're like, wow, we're doing something right. This is going in the right direction.
No, yeah, I wish there was. I mean, I still have like this like small sense, not insecurity, but it's like it's an urgency to make sure that we never get complacent. And like, I feel like if I ever sit back and relax and just be like, yeah, like, we made it, then like, the end won't be too far behind. But the fact that we've made it 2 years, that in and of itself is a testament to the fact that we're doing something right.
And through a pandemic, mind you.
And through a pandemic, yep.
So that's great. What is success to you?
Oh man, the success to me, from a personal standpoint, is the fact that I still get to actually enjoy coming to work. I feel a little guilty about it sometimes. If my friends or whoever, or my wife has had a bad day at work, and, they're just kind of grinding, and I'm just like, oh yeah, you know what I got to do today, and I got to taste all these new beers, I get to smell all these cool new hops, like, I got to be in a podcast, I get to have fun, I get to go to restaurants,
right,
eat delicious food, and talk to, chefs that win competitions and stuff. It's like, oh, this is pretty sweet. So just the fact that, I get to go to work every day and enjoy what I do is pretty successful to me.
Yeah, I feel you on that aspect, because I love my job. Being a firefighter is pretty amazing. All around. It's just the camaraderie and just everything. There's those exciting moments when you hear the bells, and it's like, hey, it's like it's a bit of adrenaline rush, It's
absolutely.
It's all around.
I feel like the older you get, the harder it is to kind of get that adrenaline rush.
Yeah, right.
I played a bunch of sports when I was younger in high school and whatnot, and it's like you get that adrenaline from competition, doing it that way, and you're working, working with your team and trying to just striving to just be awesome, and when you actually win, just a great feeling, and hard to kind of keep that going as you get older, I feel like. So I'm sure you don't I'm sure you don't struggle to find that, but
no,
it's this has definitely provided that kind of an opportunity for me too.
Right. So through everything, I don't know if you seem like you seem to enjoy your job and everything you do, but is there ever a time for like a mental break from everything, and what does that look like for you?
Hell yes. It's like it's the best thing about being open for 2 years now is I finally realized that if I'm not here, the place isn't going to burn to the ground.
Right.
I've always known that I have amazing partners and amazing staff, but still there was this if I'm not there, what's going to happen? So it's when I was home, I couldn't put my phone down, I couldn't stop checking my emails, and I couldn't stop just being a little anxious about what was going on.
Right.
Just because I wasn't there and I didn't know. But I think if there's one positive to this pandemic, it was that, we slowed down a little bit here, just from hey, we're not open 7 days a week anymore. We're only open 5. And for a while, we weren't letting people in. So it was we were forced to really slow down and just laser focus on, all right, we're going to production. We're just going to do these 1 or 2 avenues to sell our beer. And it was all right, I'm going to take a step back and just kind of appreciate what's going on right now. And, I get to spend a lot more time with my family. And I think that's going to continue once things get back to real life, because, you got to realize there's still a balance. Even though I love what I do, you can easily get burned out. I mean, when you factor in the planning, the build out, then, and then being in business for 2 years, it's really, I've been going at this almost 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year for 3.5 years. And that takes a little bit of a toll. So,
I'm sure the hustle's real, man.
Yeah.
It's a stressful thing.
Definitely lately I've been trying to just separate, go to the beach with my fam. Like, we just had our second kid in April at the height of the pandemic. That was fun. And, you know, I was home for a few weeks there, just kind of, you know, doing the whole father thing. And it was a good reminder that there's other stuff going on too, to definitely separate for a minute to recharge those batteries. I know that's a cliche, but it's true.
Yeah. No, it's much needed. I mean, mental health, man, you know, just take a break, you know, like you said, step back and recharge. So I always ask this question. I love the responses I get, but what was your gateway beer into the craft world?
I think I said it already. I mean, it was like, it had to have been Heady Topper.
Was it Heady?
That was the one that was just like, holy shit, like, how do they do this? You know, I was drinking a lot of the West Coast IPAs that were super popular in 2010, like a lot of like you know, Stone, a lot of Lagunitas,
right.
It's beers like that. But it was probably Heady Topper. It was like the one where it was like it was crazy. I was with my friends, and like my friend's brother-in-law was just like, yo, hey, I got this amazing beer from this brewery up in Vermont. It's like the best beer in the world according to like Beer Advocate.
Yeah, Beer Advocate ranked it like number one.
And I was like, oh, cool, can I have one?
Yeah.
And he's like, no. He was like, you can have a sip. And I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, just give, and he literally wouldn't. He gave me the can. I took a sip and he took it back from me. And I was just like, oh shit, that is really good. And I can see why I didn't want to share it.
Yeah.
But at that point, you know, that's when I started, you know, traveling up to Vermont, you know, grab a couple cases of beer. You know, I'm like following which stores are getting their Heady Topper deliveries, and then on those trips up to Vermont, you know, we're stopping at all the sweet, you know, the sweet beer bars.
Of
you know,
course,
I'm drinking Hill Farmstead, and I'm drinking Sip of Sunshine, and all these awesome IPAs.
Lawson's.
That yeah, exactly. Yep. Right. So, you know, that was kind of it.
That's a good beer to be a gateway beer. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, it's still ranked up there. It's the top. I think in the top 10. I think I just recently checked, and I was like, man, it's still up there. Top.
Of course. I mean, it's so funny to drink it now, and it's like at the time, it's like, oh, this is a New England East Coast IPA,
right?
And now drinking it. Like I probably didn't have it for 4 years or something, you know, and now you get one and you're like, oh my God, this is so different from like what, you know, people consider a New England, you know, the quintessential New England IPA is like a Trillium or a Treehouse or something like that.
Right. So if somebody was trying to open their own brewery for themselves, what advice would you give them?
I would definitely advise to do a big time self-assessment first, you know. Find out what your strengths and what your weaknesses are, and, you know, focus on the things that you know you do well, and then find somebody to help you do the things you don't do well. I mean, that's kind of why I partnered up with Brian. It's like, okay, I can brew beer, but it's not my strength.
Right.
Like, I know enough about it to, you know, be dangerous and everything. And I could have opened a brewery myself. I would have gone a lot smaller scale, but, you know, that's one piece of it. You know, it's like the other thing too is I feel like everybody I talked to as I was opening the brewery, like I told them my plan, it was be like, oh yeah, you know, we're going to get this, you know, tiny, you know, be a small, you know, do like a, you know, 3-barrel system, you know, we'll do just taproom sales. And they're like, no, don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Go bigger.
Yes.
I mean, if you can do 3, you might as well go 5. You know, it's not that much more expensive, and honestly, it's the same amount of work to brew 3 barrels as it is 5 barrels. And you know, and then I talked to somebody else, be like, okay, so here's the plan. I'm going to do a 5-barrel system, and if you're no, don't do 5. 5's too small. Like, if you're going to do 5, you might as well go 7. And I'm like, and like literally, this just kept happening. And then, you know, eventually, like I settled on 10, and even at 10, people were just like, no, don't do 10. Like,
man, I can't do this anymore.
Do a 20. And I'm like, listen, I have to stop somewhere. Like, I'm literally already 3 times bigger than I was originally planning on to. So just, so that's one thing too, is just like really be honest with yourself about, you know, if you can spend a little bit of extra money early, if you can, you know, I know that's a luxury that not everybody has,
right.
But it's really worth it. I mean, one of the things that helped us big time was the fact that we opened with a pretty robust canning system. I mean, it's definitely nothing like any of the big guys have, but we're able to crank through an entire 20-barrel batch of beer, in a few hours if we're putting everything into cans, you know?
Right.
And at the time, we invested in this canning line. It was overkill. We didn't really need it at the time, but I had, the future in mind when we bought it.
Of course, yeah.
And I honestly, I had no idea that it was going to come in handy so early. There's going to be a pandemic, and all of a sudden we're going to have to put everything into cans. But, for us to pivot to packaging everything into cans wasn't hard because we were already kind of set up to do it.
Yeah.
So, just making sure you spend the extra money if you can on the equipment. I mean, the beer is the lifeblood of your company. So it's like, I definitely skimped on some things. But when it came to building out the brewing component, the production stuff, it's like I tried not to, and I tried to do my research and just make sure that we were going to be equipped to grow.
Right. Yeah, good advice. So did you have a funny story prepared for us?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could be funny depending on if you're a lawyer or whose perspective this is from.
Yeah, right.
So Brian's a big music fan, and I mean, so am I, but he's into it more so than I am. And, he's into The Cure. He's a child of the '80s, so The Cure is kind of one of his favorite bands. And
right.
There's a song that they have. It's called "Boys Don't Cry."
Okay.
Pretty popular, I guess. It's one of the most popular bands. We had this idea to do an IPA brewed exclusively with cryo hop pellets, and he wanted to call it Boys Don't Cry. So we were like, all right, cool, that sounds great. It makes all the sense in the world.
Right.
Like a little bit of a nod to his one of his favorite bands. And so sure enough, the can art is very very heavily influenced by it was a poster. It was a poster that The Cure had, or like a cover for one of the single albums or something.
Right.
And sure enough, after the second time we released the beer, we get a nice letter from some lawyers in London, England, saying, essentially, hey, stop selling this beer that uses Robert Smith's likeness and and the name and everything. It's like, unless you just want to send us a case of beer and we can try it, and then maybe he'll like it and he'll be cool with it. Like, that's essentially, like, imagine this like very dry British humor.
Yeah.
It's just like it was a cease and desist. Don't get me wrong. It was written by these very high priced lawyers.
Right.
But it was very unhardo. Like, I was expecting it to be like, we're gonna come after you for everything you're worth, blah blah blah. They were just like, why don't you send us a case of beer and we'll see where it goes.
Right. He might be on board with this.
Right. So we were like, we looked at each other. We're like, all right, we actually had a batch already like in process. So there was something in the letter that was just like, just sell through the existing inventory and then stop, never brew it again.
Right.
So we were just like, all right. So we actually sent over a case of Boys Don't Cryo to Robert Smith of The Cure. This was probably April 2019.
Right.
Yeah. April or March of 2019. And it's very expensive to ship beer to England, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
It was probably $400
right.
to send a case of beer friggin' to England. And sure enough, like, the lawyer confirms that they've received it, and then we don't hear anything forever. Right? Like, we followed up like 3 months later, 6 months later, a year later, and just crickets. Then, like, in the middle of the pandemic, I don't know exactly remember when it was probably May or something, we randomly get this email from Robert Smith. And he's just like, oh, hey, guys, just wanted to let you know, like, I totally had this beer, like, it must have been over a year ago. Here are some of my tasting notes. I don't think he knew what a New England IPA was.
Right.
Because he, like, one of his things was just like, is it supposed to be clear? Or is there something wrong with this? Because it's not clear.
Right.
It's hazy.
It's hazy, right.
It's like, yeah, no, that's how it's supposed to be. So he didn't really like the first iteration of it that we had. So, we took his notes and we brewed it again. and we sent it back to him. So like, it's funny. We're now brewing this beer again because Robert's been like, yeah, okay. He had the second iteration of it, and we're just like, I mean, I don't know if he ever said like, yeah, you're good to go with this. So we may get another cease and desist or something. But
we'll wait and see.
It's just super funny that like now we have this ongoing dialogue with a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer about a beer we made
now
2,000 cans of.
Right.
Okay.
Now, 2 years ago when you opened up your brewery, did you ever think this would be happening? Probably not.
No.
That's awesome.
Not really.
That's amazing, man.
It was pretty interesting. It's funny that he didn't like that first iteration of it, though, because it's like honestly one of our most popular beers.
Really?
But yeah.
I got to try it. Well, if I can, anyway.
Oh, dude, that first one, we haven't made it since...
Jeez.
I don't know, we haven't made it in a while. So we're on to the new version of it, the Robert Smith approved version.
Right. So I have a little segment called Quickfire 5. It's 5 quick questions, beer related, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Sorry.
Okay, it's all right. No problem. Okay. So one of Stellwagen's beers you'd recommend someone try?
That's my boat.
Okay, what kind of beer is that?
That's a New England style IPA. Got a pretty extensive dry hop. We use Galaxy and Citra.
Favorite brewery other than your own?
Oh man, I could never choose just one.
All right, of course not.
If it's on the South Shore Beer Trail, I'll drink it and I love it.
Gotcha. So, favorite style of beer?
It's got to be an IPA.
IPA. Barrel aged, imperial, or both?
Oh man, I definitely love some good barrel aged wild ales.
Right.
Just some spontaneous fermentation.
Right.
Get that acidity, get that funk. It has some fruit in it too. That's pretty good.
So barrel aged.
Mm-hmm.
Last beer you drank that blew you away?
I was really, really, really happy with how our first barrel aged sour came out. We just released it like a week or two ago, and it was phenomenal.
What's the name of that?
Le Marais. French for the marsh.
The marsh. Gotcha. And you have 1 keg of beer to hold you over for a 2-week quarantine. What beer are you choosing?
Oh, it's gonna be something drinkable.
Right.
I'll take a nice crisp pilsner. Something that I love IPAs. When I'm just sitting down having a nice nightcap or something like that. But if I've got to have a keg of something that's holding me over during a quarantine, going to be a nice quaffable crisp pilsner.
Anyone in particular?
Oh, yeah, I got to choose our pilsner. But no, if I had to choose another pilsner, I don't know, anything from Jack's Abbey. They crush the
Jack's
pilsner
Abbey.
game.
All right. Well, Mike, that's all I have for you.
I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, I appreciate you being on. I'm Mike Curtin for the Brew World Order podcast with Mike Snowdale from Stellwagen Beer Company. Thanks, Mike. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening. That was my interview with Mike Snowdale of Stellwagen Beer Company in Marshfield, Massachusetts. Whether you're passing through, live in the area, or just visiting a friend nearby, you should definitely check him out. Every other Sunday I'll be releasing a new episode, so subscribe and you'll never miss one. Also, be sure to check out our social media accounts for updates on the podcast. I'm Mike Curtin for the Brew World Order podcast. You stay safe out there.